Milos, I'm sure you didn't expect the first two sets to go kind of as they did. So is it hard then? I guess you kind of expect that he's going to come back at some point. So is that kind of quite hard mentally?
Yeah, you sort of try to take things as they come. You know that he's going to make a push. He's going to try to do things a little bit differently in that third set. And I think I handled it well. There weren't really any opportunities either way until that 4-5 game, and then I had one legitimate opportunity. Maybe I would have liked to have done things differently if things didn't work out, but overall I'm happy with how I dealt with numerous situations throughout the match and how I played, and I think I did some things extremely well.
It's another big name you've taken out in this tournament. Do you think that's the hardest run you've had at a slam so far, and has it kind of really helped you not fear anyone left in this draw?
Yeah, I think there's obviously benefits. It's not fun necessarily before the tournament starts to look at it and say, hey, you play Nick to most likely play Stan in the first two rounds. You're sort of hoping for a bit more time to really work your way into things, but then on the other end of it, I dealt with those challenges really well, and right now I'm here playing some extremely good tennis, I believe, and hopefully I can make that count.
What's the progress from losing, your first match of the year? Losing against to Medvedev, and now your level. What do you feel is different now than the way you're playing?
I think it was all just really emotional and mental. I had, I believe, 8 break chances in those first 2 sets against him. I had more than enough opportunities to make the most of it, and that can go a completely different way. But then I got a little bit too down myself, and I think that sort of shined a light on something that I really have to do differently at this event, and I think I've worked on that, and I think I've also had to play against top players where I couldn't afford to be undisciplined in that regard.
I'm wondering whether you looked over and saw Sasha's racket smashing display there late in the second set, and when you see an opponent do that sort of thing, does that ever sort of leave an impression with you that can be sort of a positive in terms of, gee, I've put him in a place where he's reacting that way?
I think I was up 4-1 at that point in the second set. I heard it. I don't think I looked over. I think it was pretty clear what was going on. It can have an effect a lot of different ways. If you're a top guy and you do that against somebody that doesn't have experience, it might sort of cause them to retreat a little bit. I've sort of faced that situation, and I was also ahead at that point, so I was just really focusing on myself, so I wasn't really thinking too much about him on his end. So it didn't really have too much of an effect. Obviously, you never know why the other guy's doing it. Sometimes the guy can do it to try to help himself. Sometimes it can just be purely frustration. So you just try to focus on your own thing and continue at that point.
Milos, before the tournament started, were you thinking, you know what, if I play great, I can go really deep here?
Yeah, I had a really good off-season. I put in some of the best hours that in a long period of time, or maybe if ever. I'm not a kind of guy that needs a lot of matches. For me, it's about being sharp, moving well, and being efficient with my serve and this kind of thing. If I can get those kind of things, my serve always buys me time in matches and through tournaments to sort of figure things out. It can keep me alive for a while. So as long as I have the freedom to put in the work and with no physical hindrances, I think I can always give myself a chance.
Do you think this is the best you're playing since 2016, or are you a better player than you were in 2016?
I think I'm a better player than I was back then. I think back then I just found some situations a little bit easier to deal with because I had 2 good years from 14 to 15 before that, and it was sort of you don't have to think about things as much. Instinct takes over a bit more when you've played that many matches consecutively. Now you always have to think about things a bit more because you're always trying to search for that rhythm, that sort of what should you do, whereas in those situations I don't think I was really asking myself. I was trusting a lot more.
Milos, if we could go back to the racket smashing, you said sometimes doing that puts players in retreat. I didn't quite understand what you meant by that. And secondly, if I could ask, there's so much pressure in the game, this a fair number of players do smash the rackets. I don't really recall you doing it at all or that often, but could you talk about if you're ever tempted to do that and your thought about that?
I've done it. I can only really recall once where I broke a racket. It was actually here in 2016 in the semis. Once I got hurt against Andy, and I realized that I wasn't really going to have a chance, and it was sort of that letdown kind of frustration. I've smashed rackets more in practice. I think this year I went into the off season with 4 rackets. I smashed one on the first day. Luckily, somebody was coming down, flying down. Called my dad to meet them at the airport and give them a few more rackets. I think it can have an effect. It's just like as if a top guy, after winning a game, even though they're behind against a player that maybe hasn't been in a scenario, is a bit more vocal, tries to sort of amp themselves up. It's sort of that same thing. You're sort of, it could be to try to provoke or make the other guy think, because if another guy's in a very comfortable situation and things are flowing smoothly, it's sort of a stimulation on the side that can provoke maybe some thought, some doubt, or maybe maybe that guy's going to wake up across. Just make him think something different. That's what I meant by it.
Go foul in basketball and coach going there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Milos, we talk a lot about your serving, obviously, but how do you feel your returning's going at the moment, and particularly your work at the net seem really sharp, especially early today?
Yeah, I'm just putting myself in situations. I think I'm getting better at the net because since 2016 I've made an effort every single time I've been healthy and I could move well and be efficient to come forward. So probably in the first 5 years of my career I probably only hit a couple thousand volleys. I'm sure that over the last 3 years I've probably hit tens of thousands of volleys, and I think in that scenario things are bound to get better. And returning wise, I'm just trying to mix things up. I'm taking care of my serve pretty efficiently throughout the whole tournament. Just always trying to make the other guy off balance, think a little bit, giving different looks to try to give myself an opportunity to come forward or just put various amounts of pressure on them.
Milos, you've done best at Wimbledon and here. Is there any explanation you have for that? And secondly, your backhand slice, did it work specifically well against him because it's him, or do you think it works against anybody?
I think the way I'm hitting it, it will work against really most guys. Maybe it's just I wouldn't use it as much and short against guys that really want to come forward, because that's sort of feeding into that aspect of it. But I think I've always done well. Wimbledon, the surface has always helped me, and I've always sort of rushed over after the clay to get as much time on it. And I think I've always done otherwise well here because I've had weeks to train and prepare, where without the pressures of rushing to a tournament or from a tournament or physical sort of calculations on what you can and cannot do, you sort of just go away and you put in the work and you come here. And like I've said, I don't need many matches to play well. I just need to put in a good amount of work.
For all the injuries you've had to suffer through and recover from, is it the clarity of thought you have about the strengths of your game that allows you to get through all of those injuries?
Yeah, and also at the end of the day, I think the thing that's helped me the most is I'm not the kind of guy that gets too caught up in what the other guy does. If I can do my things well, if I can go away and train, I don't necessarily always need to hit that much with other players. If I can do my specific things well, if I can serve well, if I can be efficient coming forward and the first chance I get, and I can recognize those moments, I can always put different kinds of pressure. And I think all those kind of things and just the process I go about and how I like to sort of keep to myself when I've been away, and I think it's always given me certain motivations. There's certain things, and I think each injury has given me sort of the feeling I don't know what's next around the corner. Am I going to be hurt again or not? But it's given me more of a appreciation of when I've been healthy.
Milos, I think that people are generally surprised that you're in the final 8 because I guess the attention span is very short considering how much time you've spent in the top 10 in your career. You've been a Grand Slam finalist, and I was wondering if do you feel like you're still part of the top guys, or do you feel like you're in the process of having to reestablish that again?
I feel like I can play there. I think I have to reestablish my ranking and consistency throughout a year. I don't think you're ranked or the numbers beside your name go by just one event. but I know when I do my things right, I can give myself a chance, and I don't necessarily worry too much about what other people are going about and what other players are doing. I just sort of try to be on top of my own things and try to deal with them as best as I can.
And you talked about trust earlier. How hard is it to trust your body when you've had so many different injury problems?
It's the only one you got. You know, if you can't trust it, it's gonna be a miserable time. So you give it what you can and hope it can get you through.